Have you ever found yourself sitting quietly wondering, when did things change between me and my children? You think back to all those years spent raising them, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the moments you put their needs ahead of your own, without even blinking. You remember the times you stayed up late waiting for them to come home safely, the birthdays you planned down to every last detail, the quiet pride you felt when they reached a milestone, big or small. You gave them your weekends, your energy, sometimes even your dreams, without a second thought. And now, when you speak, they cut you off mid-sentence. When you offer advice, they wave it away. When you need a helping hand, they're too busy. And the worst feeling of all? It's that hollow ache inside when you realize, somehow, you've become invisible. If that feeling is familiar, let me tell you this: you're not alone. Many parents reach a season in life when the roles begin to shift. You were once the protector, the guide, the safe harbor they always return to. Now, it feels like they see you differently, like you're no longer essential. Sometimes they treat you like a background noise instead of the solid pillar you've always been. And that cuts deep, deeper than words can say. It's so natural in moments like this to want to react, to remind them of all you did, to get angry, to withdraw into yourself. But here's the truth: trying to demand respect almost never brings it back. What actually works is something far quieter, much stronger, and so much more dignified. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because there are powerful shifts you can make right now to change the way your children see you, not through guilt, not through arguments, but through quiet strength, clear boundaries, and deep self-respect. First, let's understand why the shift happens in the first place. You see, as children grow, their world expands, and sometimes, without even realizing it, they stop seeing their parents as the center of it. They become busy managing their own lives, their own worries. But there's something deeper too. Over time, many parents, out of love, out of habit, start sending silent messages that their own time, their own needs, their own voice don't matter as much anymore. Maybe you recognize it. Saying yes when you want to say no, rearranging your whole day just to fit their schedules, accepting a tone of voice that twists your stomach into knots because you don't seem difficult. And the more you yield, the less they notice your value, not because they're ungrateful or cruel, but because human nature tends to value what stands strong, not what always gives way. I remember hearing about Susan, a woman in her early 70s, who had raised 4 children with all her heart. In her younger years, she had been the rock of her family, firm, wise, loving. But as the years went on, she started stepping back more and more. When her children made decisions about her finances, her home, even her health care, she nodded along to keep the peace. "I just want to hold the family together," she would say with a soft smile. She thought she was being kind, being selfless. But her children began to treat her less like a respected elder and more like someone whose voice didn't need to be considered. They weren't trying to hurt her. They simply learned, over time, that she wouldn't push back. Respect doesn't come from endless sacrifice. It comes from self-respect. When you consistently put yourself second or last, you quietly teach the people around you that your time, your energy, your voice matter less. And people, even the ones who love you dearly, respond to that lesson without even realizing it. So if this resonates with you, if you've been feeling that weight on your heart, hear me clearly. It's time to stop bending over backward. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set limits. It's not just okay, it's necessary. You are allowed to speak up when something feels wrong. You are allowed to say, "That doesn't work for me." You are allowed to take up space in the lives of those you love. And no, you don't need anyone's permission to do so. Respect starts within. It begins the moment you honor your own feelings, your own needs, your own worth. And the amazing thing is, when you start standing a little taller, when you start protecting your own dignity, others will notice. They will adjust. Maybe not immediately, but they will. Now let's talk about something else that feels tempting, but rarely brings the result you hope for: fighting back. When someone talks down to you, especially your own child, every instinct in your body might scream to push back. To say, "How dare you speak to me that way after everything I've done?" To list every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every wound you've carried on their behalf. And while that reaction is completely understandable, it usually doesn't fix anything. More often than not, it pours gasoline on the fire. Emotions rise, tempers flare, words are said that can't be unsaid. And instead of earning their respect, you find yourself even more wounded, even more isolated. There's a better way. And it's not about giving up or staying silent. It's about changing your energy altogether. You see, the better way is not about raising your voice. It's about raising your presence. It's about leading, not reacting. When you meet disrespect with calm, measured strength, you send a completely different message. One that says, I know who I am. I don't have to prove it to you. Let me tell you about Alan, a retired architect in his late 60s. In his career, Alan had designed beautiful buildings, managed huge projects, and earned respect from everyone around him. But at home, things were different. His grown children often interrupted him, disregarded his advice, and sometimes even rolled their eyes when he tried to share stories or offer guidance. At first, Alan pushed back. Every dinner turned into a debate. Every phone call ended with frustration. He would point to all the things he had done for them, all the sacrifices he had made, and still nothing changed. Then one day, Alan decided to stop fighting for their respect. He realized he already deserved it, and he needed to carry himself that way. So he changed his approach. He kept sharing his thoughts, but he spoke calmly, without trying to win the conversation. He stopped reacting emotionally when they brushed him off. He started embodying the dignity he knew he had. And you know what happened? Slowly but surely, his children began to listen more. Not because he shouted louder, but because he no longer played the same old game. His quiet strength spoke volumes. You don't have to argue for respect. You don't have to demand it, plead for it, or fight for it. You simply have to live it. Let your calm become your power. Let your tone carry your strength. You don't have to convince your children of your worth. They will feel it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you stand firm without anger, in the way you honor your own voice. And here's something else that can be life-changing. You don't need your children to fulfill you emotionally. Now, that might sound a little jarring at first. Of course, you love your children deeply. That bond is part of your heart. But the more you depend on them to fill your emotional cup, to make you feel valued, to make you feel seen, the more pressure it places on the relationship. And often, the more they pull away. People, even our own children, are drawn to those who are emotionally independent. When your peace, your happiness, your sense of self-worth comes from inside, not from how often they call or how warmly they speak. You send a message that says, I am whole on my own. And that message invites a much healthier kind of closeness. Take the story of Gloria, a lively woman in her early 70s. She had given her whole life to her family. Her days were once filled with birthday parties, school events, endless pickups and drop-offs. And when her children grew up and moved away, Gloria was heartbroken. She would wait by the phone for their calls. She would text them constantly. She would remind them, gently but persistently, how much she missed them. But instead of bringing them closer, her sadness made them call less. It hurt her deeply, and it confused her. She was offering love. Why weren't they returning it? One day, after a particularly lonely weekend, Gloria decided something had to change. She made a promise to herself to start living her life again. She signed up for a painting class she had always wanted to take. She reconnected with old friends for lunch dates. She started volunteering at a local library, something that brought her real joy. And the amazing thing? Without her chasing them, her phone started ringing more often. Her children wanted to hear about her adventures, her projects. They missed her, not just her attention, but her light, her energy. Gloria wasn't waiting by the phone anymore. She was living, and that life made her magnetic. If you've been feeling that ache in your chest when they don't call, or that hollow sadness when they don't visit, remind yourself, your worth is not measured by the attention they give you. It comes from inside you. The more you nurture that inner light, the more others are naturally drawn to it, not out of guilt, but out of admiration and love. When you step back emotionally, just a little, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in strength, you create a healthy space. Your children stop seeing you as someone waiting for validation. They start seeing you as someone with depth, confidence, and quiet dignity. And that shift, though subtle at first, becomes undeniable over time. But to truly rebuild the foundation of respect, there's another essential ingredient we need to talk about: boundaries. Now, I know boundaries can sound like a harsh word sometimes, like building walls, like pushing people away. But true boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about teaching others how to treat you. Believe it or not, many adult children don't cross boundaries intentionally. Often, the boundaries were simply never made clear to begin with. Out of love or out of a desire to avoid conflict, many parents allow small slights to pass unchallenged, thinking it's better not to stir the pot. But over time, those small slights grow. What once was a sharp tone here or a dismissive comment, there becomes a pattern of disregard. Love without boundaries often turns into quiet resentment, and silence, over time, becomes a kind of permission. Let me share the story of Patrick, a retired engineer in his mid-70s. Patrick had always been a confident, respected man in his professional life. Yet, at home, with his adult daughters, he found himself shrinking. They would interrupt him mid-sentence, correct him sharply on small matters, even joke about his old-fashioned ways in front of others. At first, Patrick let it slide. "They're just busy, just stressed," he would tell himself. "It's not worth making a big deal." But each time he stayed silent, they pushed a little further. Until one night, during a family dinner, one of his daughters snapped at him over something trivial, and it stung more than he expected. That night, Patrick made a decision. He didn't explode. He didn't scold. He simply waited until the moment was calm, and then he said in a firm, quiet voice, "You don't have to agree with me, but I do expect to be spoken to with respect. If that's not possible, I'll excuse myself from conversations like this." No drama. No threats. Just clarity. It was quiet after that. Uncomfortable even. But something important had shifted. Patrick had drawn a line, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And slowly, his daughters adjusted. They didn't lose access to him. They didn't feel pushed away. They realized that to stay close, they needed to rise to the standard he had set. Boundaries are not about control. They are about clarity. And when your boundaries are clear, people show up differently. They realize your time, your attention, your presence are not guaranteed. They are precious. Boundaries, once set, don't need to be shouted or argued over. They just need to be honored by you first. When you treat your own time, your own voice, and your own presence as valuable, others start doing the same. But there's another subtle trap that often goes unnoticed, and it's one that tugs at the hearts of almost every parent I know. It's the habit of giving and giving, without ever asking for anything in return. You know what I'm talking about. You offer help before they even ask. You rearrange your schedule to babysit, to fix something around their house, to run errands they could easily manage themselves. You offer money without hesitation. And you don't do it to get a pat on the back. You do it because that's what love looks like to you. Helping, showing up, being there. But here's the hard truth. When you give endlessly, without boundaries, without even a moment's pause, you don't teach your children to love you more. You teach them to expect more. And what was once a gift becomes background noise, something they barely notice, let alone appreciate. Let me tell you about Samuel, a retired mechanic in his early 70s. Samuel was a helper, through and through. Need a ride to the airport? Call Dad. Need a loan to cover some bills? Call Dad. Need help moving heavy furniture? Call Dad. No matter how inconvenient, no matter how tired he felt, Samuel always said yes. But then one day, Samuel needed help. After a minor surgery, he found himself recovering alone. His 3 grown kids all had something come up. Work meetings, social plans, minor illnesses. They sent texts wishing him well, but no one showed up. That moment broke something open in Samuel. Not a bitterness, but a clarity. He realized that all his years of automatic giving had taught his children that he didn't need help, that he would always be the one giving, never the one needing. And so he made a quiet decision. No more automatic yes. From now on, he would help when it truly mattered, and when it was genuinely appreciated. He didn't become bitter. he became clear. The next time his daughter asked him to drive across town on short notice, he smiled warmly and said, "I'm not available that day, but I hope you find someone to help." When his son asked for money to cover a new expense, Samuel said, "Let's sit down and talk about a plan first." At first, they were surprised, even a little annoyed. But over time, something beautiful happened. They started saying thank you more often. They started asking instead of assuming. They started appreciating his help instead of expecting it. When you pull back just enough to let others feel the weight of your absence, they begin to treasure your presence again. You don't have to stop being kind. You don't have to stop helping. But kindness without boundaries becomes a disservice to yourself and to the very people you love. And while we're here, let's take a deeper breath and reflect on something simple but profound. You are not just a parent. You are a whole person with dreams, talents, passions, and a life story that's still unfolding. One of the most healing, empowering things you can do for yourself, and yes, even for your children, is to build a life that exists outside of them. I know for many of you, your whole identity was wrapped up in being a mom, a dad, a grandparent. You spent decades pouring every bit of yourself into raising your family, keeping the home together, holding space for everyone's needs and dreams. And maybe you told yourself, "I'll take care of me once the kids are grown, once they're settled, once they don't need me anymore." But now here you are. And the truth is, they're living their lives, as they should. And you? You are allowed, no, you are called, to live yours too. So let me ask you gently, what fills your cup now? Is it travel? Is it painting? Writing? Singing? Gardening? Volunteering? Learning something new? Making new friends? Deepening old friendships? Waking up without an alarm and sitting quietly with a cup of coffee? Savoring the morning sun? Whatever it is, go toward it. Embrace it. Dive into it with the same love and energy you once poured into raising your children. Because here's what happens, almost like magic. When your children see you living, not just waiting for their calls, not just waiting for their visits, but truly living, they admire you. They're drawn to you. Not because they feel guilty, not because they feel obligated, but because they see someone who is radiant with purpose and dignity. You stop being just mom or dad in their minds. You become a whole person again. Someone worth knowing, worth respecting, worth spending time with, not out of duty, but out of joy. I knew a woman once named Marlene, in her late 60s, who had spent much of her life orbiting her children's lives. She lived for their calls, their visits, their little scraps of attention. And for years, it wore her down. Until one day, she decided to flip the script. She booked a trip to Italy with some old friends. She started hiking on weekends. She picked up the guitar again, something she hadn't touched since she was a teenager. And wouldn't you know it, her kids started calling more. Not out of pity, but out of genuine curiosity and admiration. They wanted to hear about her travels. They wanted to see her photos. They wanted to hear her stories. Because now, she wasn't clinging to them. She was living her own story and inviting them to be part of it, without needing them to complete it. And that right there is the shift that changes everything. When you start living your life with fullness and joy, when you stop waiting for permission to enjoy your days, something else shifts inside you too. The tension that used to sit heavy on your chest, it starts to lift. That aching feeling of walking on eggshells, of hoping for a scrap of appreciation, it softens. Because now, you're no longer living for the hope of their approval. You're living for the certainty of your own worth. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to wait for your children to change. You don't have to wait for the perfect conversation or the perfect apology or the perfect holiday gathering where everyone finally gets it. No. The moment you choose to carry yourself differently, everything else around you starts shifting too. Because respect isn't something you demand. It's something you quietly inspire by the way you live, by the way you speak, by the way you carry yourself when no one is clapping, no one is noticing, no one is applauding. You inspire respect by how you treat yourself first. Now, let's revisit something simple but often forgotten. You matter. You matter not because of everything you've done for others, Not because of how much you've given. Not even because of the sacrifices you've made over the years. You matter because you are you. Still here. Still vibrant. Still full of life and wisdom and dignity. And the world, including your family, needs the strongest, most alive version of you it can get. The version who doesn't shrink to keep the peace. The version who doesn't stay silent just to avoid rocking the boat. The version who stands tall in quiet confidence, whose presence fills the room without needing to shout. And here's something else you might notice as you begin to walk this new path. Your children will start responding differently. Maybe they'll call a little more often. Maybe their voices will soften when they speak to you. Maybe they'll start asking for your opinion and actually listening. These changes may seem small at first, almost easy to miss. But they're not coincidences. They're the direct result of you reclaiming your space, your dignity, your rightful place in the relationship, not through guilt, not through anger, but through presence, through self-respect, through quiet strength. But, and this is important, even if your children don't respond right away, even if they resist the changes at first, don't lose heart. Change is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable, especially for those who have gotten used to the older, more yielding version of you. When you start setting boundaries, when you start living fully, when you stop overgiving and start asking for respect, it will feel different for you and for them. And sometimes, different feels uncomfortable at first. That's normal. That's part of the process. Remember, love and respect are two different things. You can love your children deeply, with your whole heart, and still set firm limits. You can care about them fiercely and still say calmly, I won't be spoken to that way. That's not being cruel. That's being clear. That's being healthy. And in many cases, these shifts do more than just change how you're treated. They actually strengthen the bond between you and your children. Because when they see you valuing yourself, it invites them to value you too. When they see you living a rich, full life, pursuing your interests, taking care of your spirit, they admire you. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, out of genuine, honest-to-goodness respect. They start seeing you not as someone clinging to the past, but as someone writing a vibrant, powerful new chapter. And let me ask you one final, important question today. Where in your life are you still giving your power away? Is it in the way you automatically say yes, even when you're exhausted? Is it in the way you swallow your feelings to avoid conflict? Is it in the way you wait for a phone call to decide if you're having a good day? Wherever that place is, that's where you start. Maybe you begin by saying something simple. I have other plans today, but I'd love to see you another time. Or, I deserve to be spoken to respectfully. Let's have this conversation when we can both be calm. Or maybe it's finally signing up for that class you've been putting off. Booking that trip you always dreamed of. Picking up that hobby that once lit you up inside. Small steps. Small shifts. That's all it takes to start walking back toward your own power, your own peace, your own radiant life. And please, please don't think you have to be perfect. This isn't about getting everything right. This is about beginning. This is about honoring your voice, your worth, your time, starting today. If you've ever sat with that quiet ache of feeling overlooked by the very people you love most, let me say this from the bottom of my heart. You deserve better. Not because of what you've done in the past, but because of who you are right now. If you're still here with me, still listening, I want to thank you for your presence, for your openness, for your courage. Because looking inward takes real strength. And the fact that you're willing to do that work tells me you are already on the path back to the respect and love you deserve. Now, before we go, I'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced moments when your children didn't treat you with the respect you hoped for? Have you tried setting boundaries? What helped you the most? Your story might be exactly what someone else out there needs to hear. So if you feel called, share a little in the comments below. Even just a few words. You never know who you might encourage. And if you found this message helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It truly helps this kind of content reach others who need it. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and click that little bell, so you'll always know when we post new videos to support and uplift you. You are never too old to reclaim your voice. Never too late to rebuild respect, and never too far from the love and peace you truly deserve. Thank you for spending this time with me today. You are worthy, you are strong, and you are not alone. Until next time, take care of yourself. And remember, living with dignity is the most powerful message you'll ever send.